Saadadeen,
Sulaiman.
how was your week, bro?
I was invited onto a good friend of mine, Hanan's platform, Hangouts with Hanan. She does Instagram lives, and we spoke about self-discovery, my time at Cambridge so far, and how that's been. It was really cool because I remember speaking to Hanan a while back about her idea and her ambitions of starting her own platform. She's really inspired by the work of talk show hosts like Oprah Winfrey and how they speak to like people about their own life journeys, and she wanted to do something similar. So seeing that manifesto is just really cool, and how successful it's been, and it's definitely inspiring. And it was an honor to be on that platform as well. And it just made me think about all the people around us that are like starting their own projects and getting really successful in their projects are wicked. So Ali with the Growth Project, who's our featured guest today, sharing his insights. Wanapa, who you lot have seen with the 1/3 of the Let God podcast, which is wicked. And Ahmed, who you've also seen, he's one half of the 180 podcast. So just seeing people around us and watching them like do their thing and just smashing it is just wicked. Yeah, man. What about you? How's your week?
Yeah, just to quickly touch on your point, it's amazing to see that we're in good company. You know what I mean? Like we're in good company, and all of us are just kind of, even without knowing, we're kind of indirectly elevating each other, because we'll watch each other's content and we'll take inspiration from each other's content, and we'll grow and develop as a result. But yeah, in terms of my week, it's been cool, man. It's been good. It's been eventful. I met up with Zakaria, a past guest on After Work. We had a nice catch up. It was good to see him. Like lockdown is starting to kind of unwind itself now, so things are feeling a bit more normal, which is good. But I would say the thing that's been occupying my head the most, I don't know if it's been occupying your head as well, Saadadeen, but so to provide some context, me and Saadadeen are going to be taking part in a charity bike ride tomorrow. So we're recording on Friday, so it's going to be taking place on Saturday, from London to Cambridge. So it's over 50 miles. Over 50 miles. I say that again. And yeah, that's obviously psychologically, mentally been taking up a lot of my space. I don't think I've done enough preparation, but I'm excited to kind of start it and hopefully finish it. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it reminds me of this episode from My Wife and Kids where Michael, the husband, and his wife are like, Jay, we'll go on a marathon together. And then Jay, she's training every day, mad hard. And he's like, nah, trust me, I'm naturally fit. I'll smash it. I don't need to do any training. And then when he does the marathon, I think he like takes a taxi half the way or he collapses. It just kind of makes me think about that, like the lack of preparation might come back to haunt us tomorrow. But I remember Harry spoke about in this episode, his trusty steed, his bike. And now we're talking about bikes, so it's funny how things come full circle.
Sure, man. Hopefully our bikes can save us, man. So before we start our reflections, I think it's the perfect time to introduce our guest for this show. Ali, he's going to be reflecting on our conversation with Harry.
Hello, Sulaiman, Saadadeen. I hope you and your listeners are staying safe and trying to stay productive during these times. I'd have to say that my favourite part of the Afterwork podcast was the Becoming Harry episode, when he reflected on the vision that he had of himself when he was younger. And he said that he wanted to be a particular type of individual as opposed to pursue a particular career path. So he wanted to be able to hold a conversation, be relatively extroverted while still reflective. And I think I really resonated with that message, because I think we often define ourselves based on our job titles when in fact it should be our personal qualities and our values that should define us. And I really like how he later goes on to say that when we begin to appreciate those personal qualities that we possess, it's when we stop seeking validation from others. That has to be my favorite part of the Afterwork podcast. Some great messages from a really interesting individual. But yeah, that's all from me. Thank you and take care.
Yeah, I agree with Ali. I think Harry's plan for the future was one that is way beyond his teenage years. One of the things we often get asked when we're young is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or if we're at a networking event, someone will say, what do you do? We're never really asked, who do you want to be? And one way I've thought about this is nouns versus verbs. So the noun is like, what do you want to be? A doctor, a lawyer, engineer, a historian. And that's the thing that we kind of work towards when you're young. I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a historian. But we don't think in terms of verbs. And I think the difference is, and I remember Stephen Fry wrote something about this in reflection of an Oscar Wilde quote. He says that we are not things, we are not doctors and lawyers and historians and engineers. We are people that do things. And I think that allows us to have a much more eclectic life. And the reason why I think the way Harry viewed his future in that way was sick is that if we think about chasing nouns and titles, we will never be satiated. I remember when I got to Cambridge, before getting here, a lot of my thinking was taken up by the idea of me getting to Cambridge. But as soon as I got here, it was no longer the idea. That title has been acquired. I've got that noun now, Cambridge student. The noun is been acquired, so now it's like the next noun. So that means career, internship, and that chase will just never end. Whereas if we think of ourselves and plan ahead in terms of verbs, then I think we can focus on the doing and cultivating habits. So Harry spoke about the wanting to be able to hold good conversation. Cultivating habits are things that stick with us regardless of the noun or the title that we have. And I think working towards the doing is a lot more fruitful. Which brings me to my question for you, Sulaiman, which is, if you had the rest of your life to focus on cultivating one habit, what would that habit be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive question. What would be the one habit that I cultivate for the rest of my life? To narrow it down to just one quality and one skill, I would say it would be empathy. It would be the ability to kind of understand and share the feelings of other human beings. Because as we navigate life, literally every single day we're going to be interacting with human beings, whether it's within our own household, whether it's at school, at uni, in the workplace. You mean random strangers that you meet on the high street. Like we're interacting with human beings literally every single day. And in order to make our journey so much more smooth, enjoyable, rewarding, I feel like it would be so valuable to have empathy, to understand what human beings are kind of, what motivates human beings. Like, I think there are loads of studies that say that human beings are motivated by three things: a desire to feel security, a desire to be a part of a community, and a desire to have recognition and feel importance. And I feel like if you have empathy, then you have a very strong understanding of that fact. It allows you to kind of navigate relationships in a much more healthy and prosperous way. But yeah, I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say, bro. What's one quality that you would develop?
Probably discipline. What I mean by discipline, or an example of that, is being able to wake up and go to bed at a particular time. And the reason I mean, it sounds kind of trivial, especially in light of like empathy and how influential it can be. But I think being able to have that discipline to like stick to that is that the rest of your life you can just fill it with the creativity or whatever you want your day with. And I think that sort of regimented nature of an aspect of our lives is really important, because it means that we can plan ahead too. So for me, it would be discipline. That would be the one habit I want to cultivate, because I think once you have discipline, then all the other things can thrive.
Cool. In terms of my theme from Harry's episode, I would say something that kind of really stood out for me was the idea of self-confidence. And you can really clearly see that this theme when Harry talks about building essential qualities, just like you and Ali have mentioned, and he talks about escaping from the trap of seeking validation from other people.
But I think it was more just a case of, if you can build essential qualities about yourself, then you won't seek validation from others all the time, right? You can trust that there's an element, there's something about you that you like. And I think that you know, for many people is very difficult, actually.
So after listening to Harry's episode, I asked myself 2 questions. Number 1, how do you become more self-confident? And number 2, are there any dangers of becoming too self-confident? So yeah, with regards to question number 1, how do you become self-confident? I came across this super engaging TED Talk by a man named Dr. Ivan Joseph. And he basically defines self-confidence as having the ability to believe in yourself and accomplish any task, no matter what the odds are. And he describes it as a skill that can be trained rather than a condition that you're born with or without. And in terms of how to kind of cultivate this skill of self-confidence, he talks about 3 things. Number 1, repetition. Number 2, positive self-talk. And number 3, removing yourself from people who will tear down your confidence, which I found really helpful. In terms of my second question, like, are there any dangers of being overconfident? I came across the work of a professor at UCL named Thomas Chamorro Premuzic, where he basically says that a person is confident when he is self-aware. He knows what he's good at or she's good at. He knows or she knows what they're not good at, and they're capable of judging their own competence with humility, which I definitely agree with. And in terms of what an arrogant person is and how that differs from being confident, he says that it's someone who significantly overestimates their own ability. And like, in reflection, like looking at both of those definitions, I don't know what you think, but I feel like they definitely overlap to a certain extent. Like, in order to be confident, in order to be arrogant, you kind of have to believe something about yourself that others might not. But in terms of their difference, which is more interesting to kind of like consider, I feel like it has a lot to do with intent and it has a lot to do with outcome. When someone's arrogant, I feel like they kind of have an intention to feel superior relative to another individual, and consequently, they end up making the other person feel inferior. Whereas someone who is confident, believes in themselves, kind of embraces who they are, and is kind of intent on achieving their full potential. As a result, I feel like 9 times out of 10, a confident person will leave other people feeling confident about themselves. With that being said, a question I had for you, Saadadeen, is, from your experiences interacting with both confident and somewhat arrogant people, how would you say kind of those interactions have differed from each other? Yeah, how would you describe that difference?
Yeah, but before I answer that question, I really like that point about confidence is not something you're born with, it's a skill that you can develop. I think we're taught from young that, or we like to think sometimes, I'm just not confident. And I think that is, it kind of, it gives you some affirmation, like, nah, this is not really a thing that is an exclusive or like reserved for like exclusive set of people. It's an attainable skill that we can all kind of work and build on. My answer to your question, the difference I think is the effect that confident people and arrogant people have on the people around them. So I feel like a confident person is someone that lifts others up while they're up, and an arrogant person doesn't really care if people are down when they're up. And if someone's up and they're up, maybe feels like there's a lot of friction here. There's not enough room for both of us at this position. So I think for me, that's the biggest difference, that the impact that they will have on the people around them. 100%, yeah.
Is there anyone that you can think of, or any kind of experience that you've had that really fleshes out that example?
I think one example I can give is, I remember going to an internship, right? And I just happened to mention it to a friend, and they had someone that they knew that was like fairly senior in that same company, and they were like, yeah, listen, I know he's my boy, I'll give his number, shout him, just chat to him and see what he's a cool guy. So I think for me, and we just ended up speaking, and it was cool, just reassuring. I know someone in this place before I go in, so maybe now if I have a conversation with someone, I can be like, oh yeah, and I spoke to so and so recently, or something like that. And the reason for me that was a marker of confidence is because I feel like confident people were just willing to help others, and they don't see other people as a potential detriment to their own. And I think for me, that's a huge marker of confidence. And it was illustrated by like just people. I think that's just one example, but so many people around me, just willingness to just help. I think that's a huge marker. It's a sign of confidence.
100%.
Before we wrap up, I just need to say that Harry's episode was just it was such a sick episode. I really enjoyed chatting to him and picking his brains. I remember the conversation we had before at Jesus College, and we were like, I remember I messaged him saying meet at the horse, and he knew exactly what it meant. I was like, yeah, Harry's on job, he knows his stuff. And he's just got, amongst other things, he's got a banging podcast voice, and I've been telling him like, you need to start you need to start your own podcast. So if you're watching this, get onto Harry, Harry_camp on Insta, I think, and just let him know that he needs to start his own podcast. I think he floated the idea to me a couple of times, but he needs to get cracking. So yeah, man, big up Harry, big up Ali as well. Thank you for sending in your insights.
Like Harry, I feel like Harry definitely represents that kind of confident person that leaves other people feeling confident. Like he has an energy about him that really does make you smile and make you feel confident and kind of uplifted. That is it for this week. To keep in touch, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. That's afterwork_UK on Instagram and Twitter, and Afterwork Podcast everywhere else.
If you took even one thing away from this episode, give us a review on Apple Podcasts and comment on our YouTube video. Any thoughts or suggestions for future episodes, DM us on our socials or shoot us an email at afterwork258@gmail.com. In any case, see you same time, same place next week.